Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I'm going to be giving you a rundown and my first impressions of the Twilight Imperium Prophecy of Kings expansion. So this is the very first expansion to be produced for Twilight Imperium 4th edition. So I'm going to give you a rundown of the gist of what's in here, not fully exploring each individual component because there's just so many. I mean, this is tons of material, but I'm going to give a few examples of the different types of new things that are in here and a general idea of what it's like and what my first impressions are. I haven't gotten to play it yet, so this is not a full review, just a rundown, first impressions. So before I get started though, I do want to say that I'm wearing one of our merch shirts. This is the I Drink and I Game, It's What I Do shirt. If you want to get any cool gamer gear, shirts like this and others as well as mugs, they're all available in my Teespring store. Link in the description below. And if you're in a position to and would like to help out the channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below where you can get access to early release videos as well as behind the scenes videos and even the ability to request review and tutorials to your favorite classic games. So now let's jump into this. So the first couple things you got here are the books. You've got a rule book and you've got a lore compendium. Now not all the lore is in the compendium. There's even a storyline piece in the beginning of the rule book that explains how the changes have occurred. The main changes being that some of the races accidentally awoke the Mayhacked, who have been lying in wait to try to come back. The Mayhacked Gene Sorcerers, if you're up on the lore of Twilight Imperium, were the former rulers of the galaxy before even the NAAZ-ROKHA took over. So this was thousands of years they've been sleeping and waiting for someone to wake them up, and whoops, some people accidentally woke them up. It causes all sorts of havoc. There's lots of other factions that have something to do with them, either directly or tangentially. And in the case of a couple of other factions, maybe don't actually have direct to do them. They have more subplots going on about them. So the lore compendium takes care of a lot of that, explaining what's going on. Now, the rules, the first big thing in the rules is they have an explanation in here on how to incorporate all of this into your base game of Twilight Imperium so that you can play with all of the stuff for the Prophecy of Kings. So this is not a bunch of optional rules. This is the sort of thing you should play with all of it or none of it. That's at least how it's described in here. Of course, you can always house rule things yourself, but it seems like that is really how it's intended to be played. So it says there's a number of agenda cards you really need to remove from the base set that will no longer be used once you're using all of the components from Prophecy of Kings. Once you remove that, basically everything else is just being added in, except for there's a couple tactical action cards, number 2 and number 4, where number 2 has a slight change to the way it works, and number 4 has just like a slight clarification, basically. Really not major changes, but you do, of course, have to remove the old number 2 and old number 4 from the base game as well before adding those in. All right, so then what do we have? So we've got 7 new factions, and of course, for the 7 new factions, we have 7 faction cards. So you have the Titans of Ul. They're these living machine race people who were created in ancient times by the Mayhacked Gene Sorcerers. They've been lying dormant ever since. The Mayhacked were driven out of the galaxy, and now they're being woken up by the Mayhack's return, only they're no longer under the sway of the Mayhacked, under their own force, fighting against them in the galaxy. You have the Mayhacked themselves, who have been resurrected and are very arrogant and going around and trying to reconquer everything. You have the NAAZ-ROKHA alliance, which is a bit of a subplot in this expansion. They are not part of the Mayhacked plot itself, where they are a pair of formerly downtrodden races that have formed an alliance to become more powerful than the sum of their parts. One of the 2 races is an offshoot specifically of Emirates of Hakan. They are cat people as well, though they don't look like lions. They more look like panthers. And then the other race are these little, almost like monkey-looking sentient beings that are very technologically savvy, and their entire race their entire faction is based around the incredible cooperation between these 2 races, down to the fact that in their storyline they talk about the fact that every household usually contains a family of both races, and the ruling council is made up of both races. Then we have the Argent Flight. Now the Argent Flight are a group of subspecies of these bird people who, back when the Lazaks first overthrew the Mayhact gene sorcerers, they freed them from being used as pawns in wars between the different Mayhact gene sorcerers, and since that time they had formed a society fully based around keeping an eye out for and trying to stop the return of the Mayhact. So now that the Mayhact are back, they're fully active and they're out there trying to fight against them. Then we have the Empyrean. Now, the Empyrean are a bit of a subplot. They're these very ancient beings, predating every other race, even the Mayhact, and seem to be a little bit patterned off of the old ones from H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness. These are ancient beings that can live in space and know strange mysteries, the answer to strange mysteries of the universe kind of thing. Kind of creepy, kind of cool, kind of mysterious. Then the next one we have is and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but I believe it is the Vul Wraith Cabal. I hope that's pronouncing it correctly. So when the Mayhact were awoken, they were awoken through an ancient portal that was discovered to their homeworld. Their homeworld is actually outside of the galaxy. It's in a rogue solar system that's out between galaxies. When they were awoken, they used their powers to tear a hole in space-time and bring their planet into the galaxy so they couldn't be locked away again like they were previously by the Mayhact. But in doing so, it tore the planet that the portal was on asunder and ripped a hole to this other dimension, which is basically chaos and hell. And the creatures in it are these living weapons of war and destruction that are supposedly the origins of all myths of demons amongst all the races. And now they've come through with their living ships and they're devouring peoples and trying to rip a giant hole to merge the two universes into one. They're pretty freaky and actually one of the most interesting of the new races. The closest thing I would compare them to in regard to they're just wanting to wipe everything out is kind of the necrovirus, but not really, because they can still take part in politics, and they're a little different, but there are some similarities. And then the final race, the final faction, I should say, is the Nomad. The Nomad is not referring to a race or even a group of people. The Nomad is an individual. He's an individual that seems to have uncanny knowledge of the future, though no one really knows how he got it. He's very mysterious, but he's used it to come to power and is making an army and military force of many different races and is slowly going out there trying to avert some event that he knows is coming. So I think the Nomad might be a time traveler from the future, but his identity is a complete mystery. And yeah, and those are the 7 factions that you get in the set. Now, after the 7 factions, we do have components for, and I'm going to be referring to some of them as we go, for 2 new players. So you can have up to 8 players now. The first pair of components are here at this part in the component listing, which is why I'm referencing it, because we have another pair of tactical boards, as well as, of course, their quick reference sheets here for the 2 new players. In addition, we have a full 8 leaderboards. Now, these are, I'm going to show one of them here. These go on the other side of your faction sheet, and they have a cheat sheet for all of the new rules in the expansion. In addition, they have a place for your agent, commander, hero, and mech cards, which I'm going to explain. These are all new types of cards and new mechanics that have been added into this expansion. So I'm going to explain those when I get to those, but this is just where you keep them, and of course has a new cheat sheet on it, and we've got enough of those for all the players. Next after that, like I had already referenced, we have the 2 new strategy cards here. Slight changes only. One of the main changes is that the diplomacy card, which normally allows you to, in the old version of it, allowed you on the secondary ability to spend a token from your strategy pool to ready all planets in a particular system. It's been changed to 2 exhausted planets in the system. That's because there's a lot of systems with 3 planets now. So to counterbalance that, they have restricted it to 2 planets. And then the 4-1 just has kind of a cleanup of the verbiage to make it more clear. So again, very minor changes there. Next, we have all of the units for the 2 new players. You've got orange and violet or magenta there. I'm not really sure what colors that should be referred to, but these are for the ability to have 8 players play. So if you actually want to run a giant 8-player game of Twilight Imperium, have at it. You have all the pieces to do so. In addition, there was another bag of plastic units, and it is the mechs. The mechs are new units that can be played right at the beginning. No new technology needs to be made to play them, and they are more powerful ground troops, but each faction has faction-specific mechs, just like how each faction has faction-specific flagships. Except that there can be multiple mechs. You can have multiple of them out, and they're just significantly more powerful ground units with other cool special abilities. Some special abilities are better for attacking things, while other special abilities are better for making it easier to play these mechs in different ways. I'm going to go over a few of these in a little later when I go over some of the changes to the different factions. Then we have lots, and I do mean lots, of new tiles. So we've got a ton of new planets and new systems. I think this is primarily because now that you can play up to 8 players, you're going to need more systems. So there needs to be more out there. There's lots of 3 planetary systems, and one of the cool things is there are now legendary planets. So legendary planets have a special symbol on it. I'm going to find one to show the camera here. Here we go. Here's a legendary planet. This is Hope's End, and it has this little symbol on it. It's over here above the numbers. It looks like a partially silhouetted planet with a violet circle around it. And what that means is if you control this planet, you get to look through the legendary planet cards, and they each have special abilities. So I was looking at Hope's End. So if you control Hope's End, it has the Imperial Arms Vault on it. So you get this card for controlling it, and it says, you may exhaust this card at the end of your turn to place 1 mech from your reinforcements on a planet you control, or to draw 1 action card, your choice. There's a bunch of different abilities. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 different legendary planets with 4 different abilities, and they are all really quite cool. In addition to that, we have a new wormhole nexus. This is pretty awesome. There was a wormhole nexus in one of the expansions for 3rd edition, for those of you who remember, but it works a little differently now. So it starts on this side where it only has a gamma wormhole into the wormhole nexus, but once someone gets there and is able to flip it, it has wormholes for the alpha, beta, and gamma wormholes. So any wormhole could lead you to the planet of Malice, which itself is a legendary planet with a legendary ability, and that is really cool. In addition, by the way, there are cards that let you find wormholes where you didn't know there were, so that will be something that's happening. Then, next, we have a bunch of the red-backed anomalies. Now, there's some regular ones in here, like there's a new supernova, there's some new blank, just empty space ones, but there's some really interesting new anomalies, and I want to draw attention to them. This one in particular, you have an alpha wormhole in an asteroid field. That's interesting. Makes those anti-mass deflectors even more valuable if this is out. Then we have some anomalies with planets in their systems, which is something that I don't think we've ever seen before. So this one has the planet of Avera. Avera is a fairly nice planet, and it's in the middle of a nebula. So that's pretty cool. And then we have Cormund, which is orbiting a gravity rift. Yeah, this is crazy. There are some technologies, of course, to help you deal with those particular kinds of anomalies. And these are really interesting additions to the game, in my opinion. Next, after that, we, of course, have the new home systems of all the new races. But there's one additional thing added in that's not a new home system. It is another anomaly, but not one that you mix in because it has a greenback. It is one that you give to the Embers of Muat player, and it's because their ultimate ability that they get when they activate their once per game ability from their hero allows them to cause a system to go supernova, and they can create a new supernova out there in the galaxy, which is insane. It's a really cool ability. But everyone's ultimate abilities are super cool. There's a lot of really interesting things out there. The final bunch of tiles I want to reference are these. These are called hyperspace lanes. They have these lines on them, and what these are used for, which is really interesting, is for setups where there used to be some players who got extra space between them and some other players, like for instance a 5-player game, which was always tough. I didn't like playing at 5 players because of that. There are new setups to use the hyperspace lanes, where these are not actual spaces that you control. It just means that anything on either end of the lines is adjacent to each other, and you use these lanes to make it so that everybody is, in fact, equidistant to the players to the left and right, and has the same number of systems between them. It makes the game much more balanced, and this is a really, really cool addition. Of course, then we have a ton of new planet cards for all the new planets, homeworlds, and other worlds. Then we have the exploration cards. So now, one thing I had talked about when I was reviewing 4th edition, one of the few gripes I had about it was that they had removed the exploration mechanic, which were optional rules in the base set of 3rd edition, as well as in the expansions. They had started with optional rules to have exploration tokens that you would discover on the various planets, and then later they had added some that you could add to empty space or anomalies where there were no planets. So they added back in a new mechanic, and in my opinion, it's done better than it was in 3rd edition. It's freaking awesome. So for the exploration cards, there are 3 normal types of exploration cards, and you will notice blue, green, and red. These cards match the types of planets. So what happens is, if you take control of a planet that has that you did not take from another player, so you're the first person to get it, you get to explore it. And you take one of the cards from the appropriate deck, and then these are filled with all sorts of awesome, and I do mean awesome, stuff. The blue one even has the ability to discover a wormhole. But there are all sorts of things, and one of the most interesting things are these things called relic fragments. There are relic fragments in each of the decks, and if you collect 3 of them, you can discard them to draw a relic. Relics are a separate deck that are filled with all sorts of amazingly powerful abilities. So there is a lot of incentive to want to find relics and want to find other interesting things in these exploration decks. Now, in regard to the searching of new planets for it, there are even upgrades that will allow you, there are new technologies and new abilities amongst some of the factions that will allow you to search planets you already have under control. So even though that's not a normal thing, it is something you will be able to do, so you later can find more of these cards on planets, like, say, in your starting system, which is really cool. Now, there are also these cards for exploring empty space and anomaly areas. You put one of these tokens on any anomaly or empty space area, and at the beginning of the game, and they can be searched only if you have a specific technological upgrade that normally allows you to search it, or there are a couple other ways that would then possibly allow you to search it, and these have a lot of really cool stuff in them as well, including discovering wormholes, and also the really, really cool unknown relic fragment that is like a wild card relic that allows you to mix it with 2 of the others of a specific color to trade them in for a relic card. Now, while relic cards cannot be traded themselves, relic fragments can be traded as parts of deals, and that is really cool because it's going to help you. Like, if you have 1 blue and 1 green and your opponent has 1 blue and 1 red, you might want to trade your green for their blue, and then you'll both have 2 of the same color and be much closer to getting 3 of that color as part of one of your deals. Now, after the relic cards, we have some new action cards being added. We have 20 new action cards, 13 new agenda cards, 40 new objectives, split amongst secret objectives, first level and second level objectives. Then we have a bunch of new promissory note cards. Now, in regard to the promissory note cards, there are a full set of new promissory notes for the two colors, plus faction-specific promissory notes for all the new factions, and then also a bunch of new just alliance cards. And the reason for that is there is a particular faction that is allowed to get an extra alliance card, and so they needed to have them available for all the different colors. Then we have leaders. Now, I talked about this before, the leaders and the mechs. So there are tons of these added in. They're added in for all the factions, and this is how they work. At the beginning of the game, when you put your leaderboard out next to your faction board, you have the agent, the commander, the hero, and the mech cards you put on it. So I'm going to go over a few of these to give you kind of an idea of what we're looking at. So I'm going to grab the Clan of Sar's cards here. So these are the main new things added for the Clan of Sar for this game. So their mech is called the Scavenger Zeta. It costs 2. It has a combat of 6. And it has a deploy ability. It says, after you gain control of a planet, you may spend 1 trade good, not resource, but trade good, to place 1 mech on that planet. So this works really good with their, ability to get free, trade goods every time they're conquering planets. So you go in and take planets, and then you're going to get free mechs to throw around, so your planets will not be undefended. This is a really cool mech. Then the way these guys get set up is the first of your characters, which is the agent, starts being able to be used. The second and third, which are the commander and the hero, start not being able to be used, but they are unlocked by special requirements. And then once they're unlocked, while the agent can be used once a turn, every turn, all game, the second character, the commander, has just a static effect that takes effect all game. And then the final character, the hero, has a super ability that they use once and are then purged from the game. So to give the examples of how this works, your first character, the agent, is Captain Mendoza. After a player activates a system, note that is any player, you may exhaust this card to increase the move value of one of that player's ships to match the move value of the ship on the game board that has the highest move value. So you could do this for someone you're allied with, or you could do this for yourself. This is a really cool ability to make something move very, very quickly if you really need to get it to the front line. And you can do that once per round, which is pretty great because you activate it to do it, and then you have to wait till the next full round to flip it back face up. Now, the second character they have, their commander, he gets unlocked if you have 3 space docks on the game board, which if you know how the Clans of Sar work, that's not too hard. And then his ability is when you produce fighters or infantry, you may place each of those units at any of your space docks that are not blockaded. So you could do a build action on your home system to create fighters and infantry and have them show up all the way out on the front lines. That is really cool. And that is just a static effect goes on for the rest of the game. And then the super ability that they get for their hero. Now, all heroes seem to be that they get unlocked when you have scored 3 objectives. So this cannot happen early in the game. But once they're unlocked, they all have crazy big powers. So they're a one-time use once during the entire game power. Theirs is called the Armageddon Relay. Choose one system that is adjacent to one of your space docks. Destroy all other players' infantry and fighters in that system, and then purge this card from the game. So yeah, that is powerful, but so are lots of the other ones. There's tons of these, and they're all super powerful, and they're all super freaking awesome. Like I said before, the Embers of Muad have one that lets them create a supernova, which is super cool. Just to throw and then to give an example of a mech, I just want to give an example of a mech that is not just having an extra ability to pay for it cheaper or have it come out easier. This is the Indomitus. It is the NAAZ-ROKHA mech, and it has it's 2 cost, 6 combat, like most of them are. And it has a sustained damage, like most of them do. But instead of having an ability to help get it out quicker, it has extra power. It has a space cannon, 8. And it has the ability that it can fire that space cannon at ships in adjacent systems. So spreading these around on your planets means you have ground forces that work as space cannons as well, which is really awesome. There's actually one of the new factions that also has ground forces that work as space cannons, but I'll get to that momentarily. They do it in a different way. They actually do it with their planetary defense system unit. Okay, so moving along for whatever else we have here, other than the leaders and the mech cards, we of course have the legendary planet abilities. We have a bunch of new technology. Of course, we have all of the new race-specific technology. We have full decks of the technology cards for the 2 new factions, and all of the unit upgrades for all those for the new colors as well. And there are some unique unit upgrades specifically for the Titans of Ul, which are very cool, very interesting. Then we have the Mirage Planet token, because there's a card that lets you discover the planet Mirage and actually add it to a system. There's a Destroyed Planet token for an ability that allows you to destroy a planet. There's a bunch of attachment tokens, because a lot of the cards you can find in the exploration deck are things that you attach to the planet, improve its stats, give it a a technology specialty or something of that sort. And there's tons of those. There's also a ton of wormhole tokens. There's the Ion Storm token, which is something you can discover in empty space, which becomes an unstable wormhole that every time someone goes through it, it flips from being an alpha to a beta wormhole back and forth. Very cool stuff. There are Dimension Tear tokens. You have a technology, a race-specific technology with the Vul Wraith Cabal to open these tears in space-time. But then there's also a set of them for, of course, the Necrovirus, if they were to steal that technology so they can open the tears. Then, of course, there are some specific other faction-specific tokens for, like, the Titans of Ul, etc. The new tokens for all of the new factions. Then we got extra infantry, fighter, and trade goods / commodity tokens. Just because, you know what, you needed some more. I mean, with playing with 8 players, you might have been running out of some of these, so they got more of them. And that's all of the components. That's everything that comes in here. Then we have a setup area where it talks about how to specifically set up the hyperlanes to make it more fair, specifically at 5 and 7 players respectively. I think this is a brilliant idea. I love the hyperlanes, specifically for 5 and 7 player games. Then you have the full rules on how to use all of these new rules, which these are really well done, very smooth, none of it is confusing. Actually, as much as in here, this is all really easy to understand. It does not add that much more explanation to the game of Twilight Imperium, which is fantastic. And then we have some pre-generated, very even setups for all different sized games, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 player games. And in these, they have specific planets and systems in specific places. So that is the gist of everything we're working with here. New factions with lots of really cool abilities. New mechanics that further diverge the factions in regard to, you've got the mech units, which everyone can play from the start. It's not something you have to build up towards like you would, say, with the War Suns. These are unique, interesting, new heavy ground troops. You have also the leader abilities, which you start with one and the other 2 you slowly release, but gives you new asymmetrical player powers to use for all the factions. Better balancing of the boards in odd number games at specifically 5 and 7, which is really great. Of course, 7 being a new size because you can play up to 8 players in this. And lots of new cards, lots of new factions. Okay. I'm going a little crazy here because I love this. I haven't gotten to play it yet, so this can't be a full review. I'm not going to give it a rating out of 10. But let me just say that this is all fantastic. So let's start with just the simple thing of putting in something to make 5 player games more viable and more balanced. This is awesome. This is something I've wanted for a long time. The new types of systems, having the wormhole nexus brought back, but in a new and interesting way, is great. Having anomalies with wormholes or planets in them, in those systems, also really cool. I love the leader powers. I love how they work. Those are really cool. And you know what? All of the new factions are really different and interesting. There's a couple of them where they have some parts where you're like, okay, that's a little similar to this, or that's a little similar to that. But overall, the factions are unique and different. I want to try all of these new factions. So the bottom line here is, with all of this stuff, and this is a ton of stuff. I mean, there is lots of material here. Should you buy Twilight Imperium, Prophecy of Kings? And the answer is yes. Resounding yes. There is just awesome amounts of stuff here. If they had everything but did not have the new factions in, or even the 7th and 8th player in, I would still say it's resounding yes. Adding in the balancing mechanics, adding in the new abilities for each of the existing factions is fantastic. But then on top of that, you add in 7 new factions, which all have really interesting new play styles, and of course the ability to play 7 or 8 players if you want to, which is something that is pretty awesome. Yeah, I have to say that this is a must-have for fans of Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. If you have Twilight Imperium 4th Edition and you like Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, you gotta get this expansion. This is fantastic. There you have it. Now, I do want to throw this out. I want to ask people what they think. I'm thinking about doing a series of deep dives on each faction, including the stuff in this expansion for that faction, on how to grok that particular faction for Twilight Imperium. Would you guys like to see a series of videos on that? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see me do more like this, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.